When I was at IIT, which is 35 years back, AI was a rage. Right? Hasn't happened for 30 years. Maybe it'll happen this time around. Surrounding yourself with people in different areas of expertise, different perspectives is more valuable than having a mentor. Whether it is the growth that we need and deserve, whether it is the employment creation that we need, I do believe that entrepreneurship is the only route. Because a strong network is with very few people. That is a very limited network. But your weak relationships can be with 100 people. And that is really what is the powerful network.
तो जब हम रिसर्च कर रहे थे,
हाँ,
हमें ये पता लगा कि you were about to do your PhD.
I went for my PhD, yeah.
You did go for your PhD and then you started jobs ahead.
No. PhD was Berkeley, so I got admitted for PhD, but I never had the intent of doing PhD. I wanted to do a master's, and then because startup वगैरह करना India वापस आओ, all of that.
Okay.
Then in '97, I was going to, at least I was considering doing an MBA.
Okay.
So that I decided not to do. I got admissions, and then I said नहीं जाएंगे because वो जाएंगे तो फिर startup postpone हो जाएगी. And then '99 I did my startup. So it was not right then. Yeah.
But a few years later.
Couple of years later, yeah.
तो जो फर्स्ट वाला स्टार्टअप था,
हाँ.
उसमें ऐसी क्या गलतियां आपने करी जो which made it easier for you to do the second startup?
Easier or not, I don't know, but गलतियां बहुत करी थी. That was a .com boom, so we overbuilt our teams.
Okay.
Then we had to fire people.
अच्छा.
So there were enough mistakes. Which of those specific mistakes help you now or not, you don't know, right? Because you're a different person 15 साल बाद. Right? A lot of learnings under the way. And then you make new mistakes. तो वो तो चलता है. There is nothing called expertise in startup.
So what are some things that you learned the hard way in your current startup?
So for example, this in my current startup. So I think a lot of that has to do with knowledge of how financial services businesses operate and scale. So just say in a normal startup, you would say, okay, you got the product market fit, you scale, then over time profitability will come. In the financial service business, because there are credit rating agencies, for example, right? The ecosystem expects you to be profitable and then scale. So striking those balances is very different from how you would do it in a normal tech-based startup.
Right.
The way you raise capital is different.
Right.
And those capital providers will impose constraints on what they want you to do, what they don't want you to do.
Right.
So yeah, I think the whole dynamics of capital, profitability, those are very different in this space. So that's been a learning gradually of what metrics are important for you, what metrics are important for people who are going to support you.
Right.
How do you balance those? So that has been one. Differentiation is a challenge in our business because for most part a loan is a loan. And you start at a position of disadvantage because State Bank can get capital at 5%, you get capital at 14%. So you're starting with that disadvantage, right? And you have to cover up that disadvantage. Forget about differentiation.
Right.
First you have to cover up that disadvantage and then you have to differentiate against other people in that pool.
Right. So it's a fairly competitive field.
Yeah, it's a fairly competitive field, yeah.
Right. So both your startups had a co-founder, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So what would you say is a good way to find a person you would want to work with in the future? You can see yourself working with someone.
So I think it was different in both times. The first one was, my co-founder was someone who I knew from IIT.
Okay.
And both of us were very young. None of us had any expertise, so to say. But energy, trust, desire to do something big. I think that is what pulled us together. In the second one, I basically sought out a co-founder with a specific skill set because I was going to get into the lending industry. I've not been in lending businesses. I said I need someone who understands lending. So, we got introduced, we met, we worked for a while together to come up with the business plan and all. And during that process, we developed the comfort that we can start a company together. But I didn't know my co-founder from before.
Right.
So very different ways of looking for co-founders and what you're looking for in a co-founder. In the first case, it was more someone who shares your passion, someone who has the same motivation, same value system. In the second case, it was skill set driven.
Right. So what is your view on working with a friend or a family member? And how do you deal with conflicts that you might have with your co-founder?
I haven't done it. So co-founder conflicts, obviously, but family and close friends, I have not really done startup space, so I don't know.
Okay.
I have seen both great examples of it and I have seen horror stories of it play out in the market. So yeah, it is something that is a question that one should ask, right? Co-founder conflicts happen, but conflicts, hopefully, and in my case at least, thankfully, in both cases, conflicts have happened over ideas, not over trust and personalities.
Right.
So, you may have a different viewpoint, your co-founder may have a different viewpoint on something. And I think what has worked well in both cases actually is, respect for what each other are bringing to the table by way of knowledge and experience. And to that extent, being able to defer to them.
Right.
Of saying, यार अच्छा अगर इस एरिया में कोई कॉल लेनी है,
so
डिस्कशन हो गया, मेरा व्यू पॉइंट ये है, and but I'm going to defer because, I trust you with this judgment more than mine. So in both cases, I think that was a common factor. And my co-founders would defer to me in certain areas, and I would defer to them in certain areas.
Right.
So I think that, respect for what the other person is bringing to the table rather than the notion my idea is the best, I think that has worked well in both cases.
Right. Right. तो कल ही आप बता रहे थे कि mentors have played a big role in your life. So how would you say कि one should seek out a mentor and how to maximize what you get out of your interactions with them?
So see, actually mentors, I'm not a big fan of that idea in general.
Okay.
Right? And the reason is that I think different things can be learned from different people. And hence, surrounding yourself with people in different areas of expertise, different perspectives is more valuable than having a mentor. Having said that, if there is a person who you can respect, can confide in, and they understand how to support you emotionally through your journey, then I think it is worth having that person as a mentor. In most cases, I don't think you will ever seek out a mentor. You will know a person for some time. You will understand that there is this dynamic playing out and that this relationship can be leveraged more fully. They are motivated to see you being successful, and hence that may then get classified as a mentoring relationship. I would not go in the market looking for a mentor, right? Because I don't know them, I don't know whether they understand me, I don't know whether they understand my limitations, right? All of that I think is essential for a mentoring relationship.
Right.
So yeah, how do you find a mentor? I think by the time you're considering someone for a mentor, you've already found them.
All right.
Yeah.
And how do you maximize, how to bring the most value from them?
Yeah, two things are. One is preparation. If you're taking a question to your advisors, your mentors, whoever, I think whether you have prepared well in terms of, gathering information, in terms of at least figuring out how you see the pros and cons, having a sense of what seems like the right call to you, right? The further you can walk on your own, right, gives them better preparation. Because otherwise they are trying to discover all this in a conversation with you and they may not have the expertise in the functional matter.
Right.
See, on the functional matter, for most part, they may be relying on your research. Right. Second is a degree of, and I think this is important, right? The trust that you place in them. Right. If you are having a meeting with a mentor, you've discussed it, you've agreed something, you feel like you're comfortable, you come back and you start raising the same question all over again, that means somewhere that interaction has not served the purpose. Right? And a lot of that I think is about trust. Not trust not in the terms whether the person is going to harm me or not, right? But just that leap of faith that happens of saying, हाँ मेरे को भी ये लग रहा था और now I have some emotional support behind it or have something to think about that came out in that meeting. So I think preparation and, so to say, if you want to call it follow-up, I think those are important elements.
Right. And on similar lines, how do you think your network has helped you? क्योंकि आप पहले IIT दिल्ली में थे, पहले DPS RKपुरम you did your schooling in
Yeah, I think
IIT
most of
Delhi.
my network started out of IIT Delhi.
Okay.
What happens in these networks is when you are building those relationships, you are not thinking about network. At least when we graduated, the reason those friendships had happened was not because we knew that someday this network will help us. And I think that is the beauty of those, right? Because all of us know that our relationships are not driven by an agenda. And even till I want to say the first 8-10 years, those networks were not visible because none of us were in a position to exercise influence, right, for our friends. But if I look at last even 15 years, right, and that would have for us meant that we were already out of college for 15 years, right? There the power of the network starts to come into play because now all of us are in positions where we have a degree of influence, sphere of influence, right? And hence our networks are valuable. So whether it is finding people, whether it is talent, when I say people, whether that is, in my business, finding connections in the banking industry, finding investors, basically, I don't think there is a company, organization that I can't reach in one hop.
Okay.
Right. Literally one hop.
Right.
And reach at a reasonably senior level.
Right.
That is the power of the network.
Can you give one instance where your network has really helped you?
नहीं, बहुत सारे हैं. Last week we are recruiting for a position. I was identifying talent. I dropped a message to one of my, and this guy is not even my batch. This guy is 2012 batch.
Okay.
He immediately sent me 3 people. I met all those 3 people. Right, great talent. Right, the same thing can take a month to happen without the same quality of talent on the table. Right, and the thing is that I am leveraging off it, but those 3 people who came and met me are also leveraging off the network.
Right.
Right, they are coming and talking to me because they would be potentially interested in a position.
Right.
Right, and they are placing the same trust here. There is this common bond because of which we know that we can trust each other. So it is, networks work both ways. Right. I need some help with a lawyer in US. I dropped a message. Literally within half an hour, I had a conversation. There's another, a friend of mine, also IIT. They were selling into a big enterprise in the US. Right. I have no connection. There was some challenge they were facing. I dropped a message within half an hour. A person who knows that group in that company, that work group in that company, their buyer, was like, let me know kya chahiye.
Super.
So those networks are very powerful, but they take time to become powerful.
Right.
Right. Because today, if I am graduating today, मेरा ही क्या network है जो मैं अपने दूसरे दोस्तों की help कर दूँगा. Right. So it's the power of the network becomes visible
much later
after a while.
So you think the relationship should be authentic and not for the sake of connecting with someone? Matlab, it's by happenstance that you become connected to someone and then it pays off later somehow.
Yes. And that connection can be at various levels of intensity. Right? I've got my closest circle of friends, but in my batch at IIT there were 350 people. It's not like all of them were my close friends. It's not like I was cultivating relationships with all of them. Right? But this common shared experiences of IIT. Right? If I drop a message, right, any of them will pick it up.
Right.
It's not that I had a strong relationship with those people. So the networks go beyond the strong relationship. In fact, there's this whole notion of the power of weak networks.
Okay.
Right? Because a strong network is with very few people. That is a very limited network. But your weak relationships can be with 100 people. And that is really what is the powerful network.
Right.
Not your closest friends, just by sheer power of numbers. Right? So all the 3 examples that I gave you actually are not my closest friends.
Right.
Right? They are my weak network.
Right.
So the power lies in those networks, but by sheer numbers, not because your close friends are not willing to help you, and my close friends have.
Right.
And then it's a give and take, right? If I get a message on that group saying I need help and I can provide help, then I'm also equally eager to help.
Right. So there's a culture of helping each other out. And that's only limited to say IIT or in your experience, or like even with school and later in
So in
UC
my
Berkeley?
case, most of it has been IIT,
Okay.
right? But I think for different people, it could be different networks that A, they have cultivated, they have invested in, they have kept in touch, and B, you know, there's that extent of relationships around that. But for me personally, it's more IIT than either school or Berkeley for that matter.
Right, right. In fact, still, even if I talk to some people from IIT, they would still know you. You're a legend in the hostel still. So, could you recount on some important times or some important events at your college that shaped who you are today?
See, I don't think there were mega events, right? When you are in college, you do what you do in college, right? You go to classes, you know, struggle together, you do cultural events, you play sports, you eat in the same mess, you know, you crack stupid jokes together. So I don't think there's this notion of, you know, that one event really blew me apart.
Right.
At least in my case, that wasn't the case. But I think all of those small shared experiences, what, you know, you remember, right? Those become memories. Those are what builds these relationships, because, you know, all of you have that shared history. Even people across batches who have not gone through the same experience together have still gone through the same experiences, you know, in their journey, right? So if you talk to people around our batch, they will say, हाँ यार KLS ढाबा था, बाहर ससी का ढाबा था, पराठे मिलते थे, right? Now we may have experienced those at different points in time, but we have experienced those, and there is a sense of those experiences being shared as if they were together, right? And that is why you will see a lot of us connect across batches, right? You will connect with people who didn't even go to the college at the same time that you did, right?
Right.
So because रहेगा, हाँ यार वो प्लक्षा जाते थे तो बैडी खेला था, right? आपने कभी खेला था, किसी और ने कभी और खेला था,
हाँ, कि कैंटीन में खाना खाया था, ये खाया था.
absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, those also count as shared experiences, even though you did not share it together.
Right.
Right? You will remember, you know, some of your profs by their quirks. Right?
Correct.
हाँ ये बंदा ऐसे करता था.
Correct.
Right?
And many of your professors for how great they were.
Both. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Correct.
So yeah, I think that those become the shared basis, and I think there is a value system to every university. Right? You know, in IIT, the drive for excellence, the struggles that go with it, the fact that while all of us were kings of the jungle in our schools, when we came to IIT, all of us were paupers, right? I think those are...
You were hardly, I think.
No, there were many much smarter people at IIT in my batch than me. You know, outcomes are outcomes, but they don't define the journey. So, you know, IIT is a humbling place for anyone, but it's also a very rewarding place, because at least for me, it has always been very important to be surrounded by smarter people, because that is what, you know, brings the best out in me. And so being in that company, being driven by that, learning from those people, I think those have been great experiences. So that is the other thing, right? Because we all know what is the reality of being in that institute, right? In many cases, and again, this is not with people who I would have known at IIT, it is across batches and so on. You know, many of us will not posture, right, to exhibit something that we are not. तो सबको सबकी असलियत मालूम है, right? सब वहीं से आए हैं.
Yeah, and everyone's together in the hostel.
Even if we are not together, right? 10 साल बाद कोई आया है, right? And it is like मैं bond हूँ, like मेरे को मालूम है क्या है, right?
Right.
So and what that means is that people will open up immediately. और 5 मिनट के अंदर conversation वहीं पहुँच जाएगा, right? And so those artificial walls kind of tend to come down very, very quickly. And that is because there is that sense of shared values, experiences, cutting across times. And the same thing had happened with our seniors when we speak to them. कोई 69 बैच का है, अभी मेरे को मिलता है किसी कॉन्फ्रेंस में, he's like तेरी तो रैगिंग करूँगा. Right? The conversation will start from there. It's not starting from Mr. Mittal, how are you doing?
Yeah. Right. तो आपने मेरे को एक बार बताया था कि sometimes it's important to break rules.
हाँ
And it's better कि आप forgiveness मांग लो permission की बजाय कुछ समय.
हाँ हाँ
तो ऐसे आपकी लाइफ में कब situations हुई हैं और
नहीं, so it has happened very frequently, and the magnitude of things that you break might be different. But yeah, matlab whether you are in business and you are saying, okay, we are going to do things differently here, right? That can be the most innocuous example of doing this. Or it could be, you're having fun and, for whatever it's worth, you're sneaking out of the hostel when you're not supposed to. Right? So I think there are umpteen number of those instances. I think theoretically speaking, it's important that you calibrate the risk carefully before you do it. But when you are 20, 25 years old, your hormones don't allow you to do that, and so sometimes you will end up taking risks that are disproportionate to
the reward?
the reward. But that's the nature of the being. So. Yeah, I think over time, the only other thing that I would qualify that by saying is respect other people. So, my freedom stops where your freedom starts. And to that extent, yeah, breaking rules is fine, but don't break other people in the process, right? So I think that is important. But
Right.
this is a 50-year-old talking to you. If there was a 25-year-old talking to you, all this sensitivity wasn't there.
But I think the insensitivity is important to build the sensitivity later on.
Whatever works, right? I'm not much of a philosopher, but whatever works. I think every person is also different. They build relationships differently.
Right.
They command respect differently. So it's not necessary that, what has worked for me will work for you. And I think you used that term earlier, right? I think it's important that you can be authentic. Because as soon as you're not authentic, people know that. Right? So,
That's true.
So I think that's the important part.
Right. So what is your vision for Plaksha University? Where do you see the college in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, the idea behind Plaksha really has been to, create a best-in-class university. First in India and then in places like India, right? It is surprising that students who can often tend to prefer to go and study in universities abroad, and I think we'd like to change that. Right? We would like to change the notion that we should borrow on most of the research that we need to move our country forward. Right? Because why would someone else be interested in doing that research that we need? So we need to create institutes of impeccable quality of research, rooted in local context, so that we can benefit our society. Right? We need a generation of talent which can imagine the future and build the future. Right? I do think that entrepreneurship is our only answer to achieving, what you may call is our destiny in India. Right? Whether it is the growth that we need and deserve, whether it is the employment creation that we need. I do believe that entrepreneurship is the only route, and technology is the only lever to break this cycle of we don't have enough money, so we don't have enough access, so we don't have enough money and quality of services. Right? That can be broken through technology. So a lot of us as founders of Plaksha have that conviction that great applied research, high level of focus on being able to build and create, using technology extensively across problem areas. Those are really the levers for change, and that is the vision we are chasing at Plaksha.
Good.
India is a country of 1,004 people. So to that extent, I don't think one university is going to alter what we do here. But if we can demonstrate how this is done, then hopefully 100 other universities come up. So I think that demonstration effect is the other piece that we feel passionately about. In some sense, the scale of impact may come from there. Even Plaksha is 5,000 people or 10,000 or 50,000 people. India is too big a country for that.
Right. So you were in venture capital.
Yeah.
You stay ahead of the curve in terms of the information about industries. You're now also part of the education industry in some sense with Plaksha. So which industry do you think one should plunge into in the next 10 years? What is the future?
Yeah, I think I understand some industries more than others. So, for example, is there a very compelling future in mining and petrochemicals? I don't know the answer. I'm not saying there is. I'm not saying there isn't. Amongst the industries that I have been in and around, largely technology-driven industries, to me certainly healthcare looks like a very promising one. I think there is a massive transformation going on in healthcare. I think the whole paradigm of curative healthcare is insufficient to deal with what we have coming. The cost of healthcare is going through the roof. The access to healthcare at a population scale still continues to be challenging. So I think there will be more preventive, there will be more personalized healthcare that will get delivered, and technology will have a core role to play in it.
Right.
The revolutions on the understanding of our genetic code, is another big window into how to solve for healthcare. So I think healthcare is one of the industries that stands out in my mind. I think the industries that are large today will continue to be large. So financial services will continue to be large, but I think the structure of those industries can change significantly. It's an exchange industry, right? So 500 years back, the banks didn't exist, right? All the banking was done in business. And then someone came in and created a bank, and then banks became the center of the financial universe. And I think that is going to decentralize again, right? So, banks may continue to be the control points of the financial universe.
Right.
But the delivery point for financial services will become more and more democratized. You're already seeing this with crypto, right? We are seeing this with other decentralized technologies, but we're also seeing it in how people want to consume finance, right? At Indifi, we give loans to MSMEs. They have a clear preference of not walking into a bank branch, but being able to avail a loan from their trading interface.
Right.
So I think even in terms of customer expectation, it seems to be moving out. So there is a transformation, I think, multi-decadal transformation going on in that area. And then, of course, there is an underlying set of technologies, right? Whether it is healthcare or banking or education, there is this underlying set of technologies that is driving all of that, right? So artificial intelligence, material science, some of those fundamental technology advances are influencing each of these industries. So you could think of this in terms of which industries, or you could think of this in terms of what fundamental technologies. I think both those layers are very interesting.
Right. So many technologies come, like say for example crypto blockchain. So how do you assess whether something is going to exist in the coming years or not? Say the internet came. So that's what I hear from many adults, that people said this is just a fad, and people won't even be using it after some time.
Sure.
But now everything is internet based.
Yeah.
So how does one assess whether one technology will take over the world or not?
No, see, new technologies have a risk attached to them. Right? So for every internet which came in, attracted skepticism, but then eventually became successful, there will be examples of technologies that came in and never took off. When I was at IIT, which was 35 years back, AI was a rage. Right? Hasn't happened for 30 years. Maybe it will happen this time around. Right? So there is a real reason why some technologies propagate and some technologies don't propagate. There's a time, there is a use case for these, right? So I don't think there is any issue with there being a degree of skepticism with certain technologies, at early stages of growth. How you deal with that depends on what business you're in, right? If you are a business entity that is going to be a user of this technology, not necessarily a driver of this technology, you might be okay saying that we will be late followers in this segment. You don't have to be early in every technology. Right? If you're a startup which thinks that this technology is going to enable a new model, then you're betting more heavily on that technology and going all in into that technology, and you may end up being the change creator in that industry. So different organizations will have different appetite to take a risk on a new technology, to invest in a new technology, and be able to benefit from that new technology. So those approaches will vary, across industries. So, for example, if you think about music industry, right? Initially, it resisted the internet, right? At least the incumbents resisted the internet, right? Today, all music is internet. Have all the incumbents died out? No. Some of them adjusted to that internet phenomena later, but continue to be thriving businesses. Some die, right? Because maybe they got too late in adapting to it. Maybe they adopted it too early when the market was not right.
Right.
So yeah, I think there is this whole adoption curve of new technologies. There's the reason why that adoption curve exists. It is not a given that early adopters will win and the late adopters will lose.
Right.
Right.
It's about the sweet spot of timing.
It's the sweet spot of timing for that company and what it seeks to do. What are its other strengths in the market. Right. So in music that we were talking about, ownership of titles is a stable advantage, whether you are in the internet world or not in the internet world. Right. So some of the slowest companies which own a lot of historical titles, music tracks and so on and so forth, are still good companies because people need titles to play. Right. Doesn't matter whether it was on a tape deck or it was on a CD player or it was on Spotify.
Right.
So it depends on what other assets that you have which will be durable across the technology transition.
Right. So what are some technologies that you deeply believe in, some upcoming technologies right now?
So at this point, amongst the one that are more visible, the underlying crypto piece, I'm a believer in. I don't know quite what to do with the cryptocurrency bit, but the infrastructure of Web3, I think certainly is interesting. There are certain use cases that I can understand there and hence feel excited about it. As I mentioned, the bunch of technologies that are beginning to power the next generation of healthcare are very, very interesting. The ability to measure and track health parameters granularly, the ability to do personalized medicine, these are real developments. AI, we use that a fair bit. How much transformation will that cause and how much disruption will that cause is something that I don't think I have fully grasped at this point in time. Maybe also because I've heard that story multiple times in the last 35 years. So I think that's one which would fall in the kind of mid zone. When I look at the technology spectrum and my level of understanding and conviction in those.
Right. So what are some differentiating factors that you look for in a startup before investing in it? कि suppose ये चीज़ है इसके पास तो I know I'm investing in this.
So let's assume a startup is at a stage where there is zero to very little product out there, right? Because otherwise you can start to look at evidence. Right? But at that stage, I think is the problem interesting? Right? Is it a real problem for large enough number of people? And does that problem intuitively appeal to you as an investor? I think that's important because I tend to be available to startups that I invest in. I'm not a passive investor.
Okay.
And to that extent, my ability to relate with the problem is something that is important to me. I think the second piece that I always look for is, have the founders understood the problem? Right? Because very often the symptoms of the problem are visible.
Okay.
Right? In our industry, 85% of small businesses don't have access to formal financing. Right? That's not a problem. That's the outcome. right? Why do they not have access to financing? Do they want financing, right? Or do they think नहीं formal financing तो liability बढ़ जाएगा, right? Is it an economic problem? Is it a capital availability problem, right? What is the underlying issue? So good founders, tend to develop insights into the problem space which are superior, which are nuanced, rather than I read a research report and 85% of businesses don't have access to formal financing. Right. So I think that is the first visible sign to me that the founders have, invested time in meeting customers, in really understanding why the problem exists beyond the notion we are smart, other people are not. And hence, if they continue doing that as they solve for the problem and so on, then they are likely to have a higher chance of success because they have that detail orientation, they have that curiosity, they have that bias to listen to customers. So that to me, figures up at the first level of interaction. Differentiators prop over time. You can have a thesis of how you're going to differentiate early on, but you're not born with a differentiator. Unless you're coming out of university with some patents, right, which will protect your invention and so on and so forth. In most startups, differentiation is a emergent concept, right? It happens over time. You can have a point of view on this is how we will differentiate, right? So that you're playing in that direction. But it's very hard to see differentiation at an early stage of a company.
Right. And what are the essentials that a company must follow in order to pick up funds? कि ये Bible है, ये करना ही है अगर आपको पैसे उठाने हैं.
See, the Bible of raising money is well known and simplistic, right? You have to be addressing a large market. You have to have credibility as a team to be able to solve that better than others.
Right.
And you have to be able to protect the value that you create. So the issue is that this becomes so high level, right? The 10 Commandments, that everyone can interpret this in their own manner. So I think the kind of nuance of saying actually, so have you gone and understood the problem, right? Have you asked why to get to the root of the problem?
Right.
I think those nuances are important. The Bible doesn't quite serve the purpose there.
Right. What are some mistakes that you've made while investing, which you would suggest people to avoid, or it's a caution to not do this?
Yeah. So I think in the investing world, mistakes often get confused with making wrong calls. Right? Making wrong calls are not mistakes. Right? Early stage investing is a risk business.
Okay.
If you're not making some wrong calls, you're not taking enough risk, perhaps. Right? So that is one kind of mistakes that regularly get referred to. Hey, I missed Flipkart. Right?
Right.
But that, in my dictionary, is not mistake. Okay. So what are the mistakes then? Right? There are things that you should have seen that you failed to see.
Right.
So for example, there are scenarios when we have made mistakes in the choice of entrepreneurs, when there were, danger signs showing around entrepreneurs.
Right.
And because we were in love with an idea, you would ignore those danger signs.
Right? What could be those danger signs?
Normally the only ones that I'm calling danger signs are things that might be on the boundary of ethics.
Okay.
Right? Whether the entrepreneur succeeds or does not succeed, I would still classify that in the element of risks and not mistakes.
Right.
But yeah, there have been cases where, unfortunately, with the volume of deals that we've done, there are cases where there was a transgression of just what's the right thing to do line. And I think that assessment of entrepreneurs is one piece. There are mistakes on, exit decisions, when to sell, when not to sell. And many times those mistakes are driven by the fear and greed cycle. Right? Of saying, okay, right now suddenly there are 3 people who have more money, we should exit. Right? Or the other way around, right? Of, everything is going hunky-dory. right? The company, is presenting a great picture, has good traction in the market. Let's stay invested, stay invested, stay invested. Whereas on the other side, for example, you might be seeing, high degree of price commoditization showing up on the horizon.
Right.
So I think those are many.
So how can one fine tune the timing that you must exit or enter?
I don't think you can fine tune the timing, in the sense that there is a degree of opportunism around when exit opportunities are available versus not, right? So it's harder to control that. But when opportunities are available, are you saying yes, no? That is a decision you can control, right? And in an ideal world, you are making a fresh investment decision at that point in time, right?
Right.
Of saying, okay, if this company came to me today, would I invest? Or in this case, stay invested in the company or not?
Right.
But I think I have gotten drawn into that fallacy of I know the company, right? It is good. And hence, why ask all those tough questions again? So I think that is where the zone of making a mistake lies.
Right.
But yeah, plenty of those. Really, I think investment business, in the private equity world or venture capital world, operates as an apprenticeship business.
Right.
You learn by doing.
Right.
Right? And there's no master class for that. And to that extent, you learn by making mistakes.
And do you think it can be automated? Because at the end, you're saying that you have to make a judgment. Do you think that judgment on some level can become automatic?
I think there is a role for technology to play there. As much as we would like to believe that this is some spark of brilliance on part of investors, I think the notion of have you asked all the right questions, right? Coverage is certainly something that can benefit from technology. Literally, when I was doing my first few investments, I would run a checklist and check off every item of whether I've covered that or not, because there can be inadvertent omissions. Right? Now, checklist is a very simple piece of technology. Right? Now you can improve on that.
Right.
You can certainly improve on discovering all the comparative companies. Right? Technology can certainly help in that.
Right.
I do know that there are some investment firms that now have a technology general partner around the table. So this is a technology engine that comes up with its own decision of whether that engine would invest in a company or not.
Okay.
By looking at, public data points, user reviews, traction, founder profiles, right? And saying, okay, in the past, what kind of companies have been successful? Now, I'm not quite on that edge at this point in time.
Right.
Because at least in the early stage investing, there are new trends, new business models that are continuously coming. Market context is continuously changing. What was possible
before may not be today.
The other way around, more often, what's possible today may not have been possible 5 years back.
Right.
So I'm not quite on the side of saying let technology make the decision, but I do think that there is extensive use of technology, and some of this is mundane technology. Just being able to track deals that you've seen and do CRM on those. So I'm not saying all of this is very high tech. I think there is a significant role of technology to improve this business.
So you made a transition from entrepreneurship to the venture capital world, then back to entrepreneurship. So you must have educated yourself a lot. So in that quest for knowledge and information, what are the resources that you use? What are the resources you would suggest others should use to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, so normally at any point in time, I'll be in a phase of trying to learn about something specific.
Right.
Right, and the set of resources changes for that. Right? So for example, when I first went into the venture industry, I needed to learn how to invest. Now, obviously, the partnership that I was in, had very experienced investors, so you can learn from them. Right, but also there is a lot of wisdom, on open sources, internet, on what are the things to look for, or what did people look at in companies that they evaluated. Venture investing is also a very networked profession. Multiple people are looking at the same investment.
Right.
So if you discuss with them, they will bring out elements that you might have missed. Right.
Right,
So
exactly.
that's how knowledge flows in that industry. Since I continue to invest in angel investments, couple of years back, an entrepreneur walked in with a crypto plan. And it was a shock for me because I said, I don't understand this. Right. And then I spent the next 9 months learning about it.
Right.
And then there was a set of resources that were specific to crypto, right? And how to stay on top of that. Just both the core technology behind crypto. So I had curiosity about how that works, and then the use cases, right? And then once I read those, in many ways I learned by writing, and so then I will start to pen down, right, what my thesis is, right? What do I buy into? What do I not buy into? Again, in this case, there were a couple of friends who were more educated at crypto than I am. So I reached out to them, I spoke to them, listened to different viewpoints, and then hopefully be able to assimilate. Right? As I mentioned, right now I've been reading about healthcare a lot, and it's a completely different set of resources, right? So in my mind, if you look at something like Twitter, right, it's a great horizontal catchment. All ideas are available there, right? So if you want to just stay in the flow of, okay, what's happening, at 30,000 feet in the world, and get a very high coverage span, right? Then you're on that platform, right? But as soon as you notice something where you see, here's a pot of gold, and I want to dive deeper in, then that is not enough, right? Then you start to go and say, who else in my network knows about this?
Right.
Can they guide me on, getting from 0 to 1 in the knowledge curve?
Right.
And then about what resources can act as a starting point. It could be books, it could be podcasts, it could be other material online.
Right.
So I think that is kind of the mix where I go. So if you tell me, okay, what are the things that you listen to, that depends on when and about what topic.
Right.
Yeah.
So आपने mention किया pot of gold.
Yeah.
Have you found any pot of gold recently?
No, each of these are pot of golds. Call them pots of knowledge.
Okay.
Right. It's not necessarily investment and making money.
Okay.
Right.
In terms of
healthcare, I'm doing it because I have curiosity about my own state of health and how that is likely to evolve.
Right.
Now, is that a pot of gold? Absolutely yes.
Right. Both in terms of knowledge and in terms of maybe investments.
It could turn into investments. Yeah. So I think this particular one, I'm not starting with the view that this is because I want to invest in this space. This is because personally it's important for me.
Right.
But yeah, crypto, for example, was much more with the view of saying, what should I invest in?
Right.
And then what should we do in our company about it, if at all anything?
Right.
Right. Both of those questions.
Right. So what is your process of ideation? If you think of some ideas, is it like बैठे हुए हैं और एकदम से ख्याल आ गया कि or do you have some system?
Ideas at the surface can come up, बैठे हुए हैं और idea आ गया. Right?
Right.
I'm not sure how valuable those ideas are.
Okay.
From a brainstorming standpoint, they may generate a laundry list, that is great. Right? I think ideas become valuable when they have context attached to it. Right? When you understand customer का क्या behavior होता है. How is the customer viewing the same problem? Right? And to that extent, in my experience, the ideas that become valuable for me, they come in when I have deeply immersed myself in a space for some time. Some time does not mean 2 months, 3 months. Sometimes it means more than a year.
Right.
Right? So, for example, when I was in Jobs Ahead, I think our best idea came to us 4 years into the journey of Jobs Ahead.
What was that idea?
It was a product idea on how people want to look for talent.
Okay.
The fact that they want to look for talent is a given. There are enough job boards which were doing that.
Right.
Right. But how do people want to look for that? Right. And that idea came from a very simple insight of saying, if you look at I don't know whether they still have job ads in newspaper classified.
Right.
Newspaper classifieds are sold by a number of words.
Okay.
Right. So you have a 25-word ad, and you're paying for 25 words. Right? If you do 40 words, then you'll pay more. So people tend to get extremely compact about putting in everything that is important for them, but still making it specific enough and controlling the word count.
Right.
So we said, let's look at newspaper classified ads to understand how do people really want to look for talent. And we did that, and we then, translated that into our product.
Right.
That became the primary way of searching on JobsAd. And that set us apart from competition.
Right.
Right? It didn't come on day one, it didn't come on day 360 for me. It came in when I was completely immersed into that space enough to understand intuitively what that context looks like. Right? Some of the ideas that we are generating at Indifi are coming 4 years, 5 years after we have started the company. So initially, we were in the process of doing what the industry does.
Right.
Right? But now we are in the phase of saying, this doesn't operate like the industry does it. Right? We have enough context. So for me, immersion in a space is what leads to valuable ideas. So it is an investment that you make. For all other ideas, at least I would like to rely on other entrepreneurs who have immersed themselves in that space and hence have that context.
Right. So how much are ideas valued in your organization, in a sense that, say, if a very low level employee has an idea, how much weight would it be given? Like, is there a hierarchical difference? And what do you think, should there be a hierarchical difference?
Yeah, the should not, hopefully not. Are we running perfect organizations? The answer is no. Right? And the challenge is this, right? We create hierarchies to be able to manage execution. There is a function that hierarchy serves, right? So hierarchy is not bad. But that hierarchy then starts to act as the constraint to ideas. That is the collateral damage to it. How well can we manage that is a function of what is the culture, what is the mechanisms, systems of information flow in the company. Right? So again, in our company, we are trying to balance those two aspects. Are we where I would like to be? Probably not. Right? But at the first level of approximation, we are acutely aware of this problem, what creates that problem, and hence we have a desire to say, as we grow, can we retain that culture where ideas can come from anywhere and they can get then highlighted depending on the merit of the idea. But the same thing that applies, for me in terms of context drives great ideas, also drives it in the company. So the first problem to solve in companies is, does the person at the front line have the same context of the company that the CEO has? Right? Do they understand our strategy well? Right? Do they understand why we are doing some things or not doing some things? So that they have the ability to then.
And what's one way to filter down the vision to each and every employee of the company?
See, there is theory, right? The theory is that, you talk about your vision often, you talk about in simple terms, you translate it down for everyone, right? And despite this theory being relatively commoditized, companies vary widely in their ability to do so, right? Now, in startups, some of the things that people routinely rely on is open seatings, right? Town halls, formal mechanisms for inviting ideas from people, not just at the CEO level, but at every level of the organization.
Yeah.
So those are some of the mechanisms that are deployed.
Many times chaos is respected. That more the entropy, more ideas would come.
I don't think that is enough. I think that is a statement of bravado as far as idea generation is concerned.
Right.
Right? Because if ideas are not followed through, ideas stop coming.
Right.
Right? So I think there is more science and art to it than, hey, our goal is break everything.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the devil is in the details. As much as all of us are doing it, all of us are also figuring it out. So if you have any ideas on how to get more ideas, please.
Yeah. So this is on a very separate note, but what would you suggest students, how could they maximize their college life? I'm asking you this because I feel that you're very balanced. You play sports and you come here and interact with all of us. We crack jokes and you're also running very successful business. So what is the best way for a student to strike a balance? And should a student strike a balance in his college days? or her college days?
Yeah, so I think let me answer this question slightly differently, right? If I were to go back to college now,
Right.
I would want to soak up so much more knowledge than I did in my first go. Right?
Right.
Universities are just amazing places to learn. That is, in my mind, and I know over time the narrative of building networks in universities has perhaps even overshadowed the narrative of learning in a university. But in my mind, universities remain great places to learn.
Golden pots.
Yeah, right. Just access to resources, people, peer groups, faculty. So that remains most compelling. Even today, when I walk into a university, that is what gives me the goosebumps first, right? The library.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of balance because balance means different things to different people. But I think the learning objective can certainly be maximized. Whatever is the style of learning. Some of it is classroom learning, some of it is learning by doing. You learn certain things when you're doing extracurricular activities, right? But just as places to learn, that would be my kind of first priority. Relationships will get built, right? And that's the reason why I feel less strongly about deliberately trying to make that happen. The reality is that all of you are going to spend 4 years with your friends and co-students in the same place, sharing experiences, going through the same struggles, dreaming about relatively similar outcomes. So I think relationships will develop. I am actually not very concerned about that. I think one of the things that obviously is available, in a new greenfield university like Plaksha that wasn't available to us, was actually, the role you can play in building an institution, right? I think that's a very unique opportunity for the early batches at Plaksha, where everything from a student club to, how the mesh should be managed, to building the technology platform on which the university can build.
It's like you're being a part of something that's going to be written in the books of history.
Yeah, if that excites you, then sure, books of history, but just, imagine an opportunity to build a university.
True.
Right. While many founders of Plaksha are contributing to building a university, they're not really building it. They're investing in building it.
Right. It's just
people
students
who are here.
Yeah. Students and professors.
Yeah, you are the guys who will build a university.
Right.
And I think that's an amazing opportunity.
Right.
And you will learn while you're doing that, right? So you will learn about entrepreneurship. You will learn about stretching the resource and making it travel far.
Right.
You will make mistakes and you will learn from them. So I think these are 2 or 3 things that in my mind are the most attractive ones
Right.
In a place like this.
And what's the kind of culture a college should have? And what is the kind of culture the students should promote in their college, according to you?
Yeah. See, again, if you kind of draw from the theme of universities being great place to learn, to do, novel research, then at some level, the curiosity, creativity, and open flow of ideas, right, becomes an essential element, right? And all those 3 things, of course, are 3 different elements. So, being able to dive deeper and question the fundamentals of everything, having an appetite to learn, the hunger to learn, right? That's the first piece, right? An environment that can cultivate cross-pollination of ideas and hence lead to new creative ideas, right? And in Plaksha, we place a lot of emphasis on interdisciplinary stuff. Part of the reason is because that's how creativity happens, right? When multiple disciplines collide.
Right.
Right. So I think those are, and then the ability to share those ideas, right? Ideas are not just business ideas, right? It is also feedback, right? It's also how do we continuously improve ourselves, right? Are we on that train where we're saying, I want to be better today than I was yesterday, every day, right? To me, that is what I imply by openness, right? So I think that has to be at the center of, culture in a university. And again, in a place like Plaksha where we don't have the baggage of history, right? I think cultivating that culture is a golden opportunity. And while we have leaders who are very, very invested in creating that culture, ultimately it comes down to every student, every faculty member, every staff member in the university.
Right. So my final question to you is, do you ever see yourself completing the PhD that you once thought of starting?
No, actually, maybe. But right now I'm just too invested in doing what I'm doing, and the learning goals are slightly outside of the realm of PhD. But yeah, I continue to enjoy learning, and so I do see myself being a continuous learner, being always a student of something, regardless of whether I get that tag of PhD at some point or not.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ira, so much. Great conversation. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for coming. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and it's always very insightful to meet someone who is a student of engineering and see maybe one day we'll be like you in some sense.
Or not.
Or not.
Yeah,
or
be
not.
careful what you wish for.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.